Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to another Crypto Maniacs podcast on the glorious high of blockchain. Of course, streaming for your viewing pleasure on Vim, and we're still on Web 2 Task. We're still on YouTube, so we're trying, man. We're trying to get off the you know the need for this stuff. So we're trying to do Web 3 here, right, Task? Right? You getting
We're, we're,
excited?
we're doing our best. By the way, what episode number is this roughly?
222. 222.
222. 222. That was a show back in the 90s, wasn't it? 222.
Was it 222?
Something like that. 227.
227.
With
Yes,
Marla
yes.
Gibbs or something.
Yes. Showing our age. Showing our age.
Yeah, this was probably only about 10 years before Cal was even born.
Yeah, it's okay. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we have the apex lion of apex lions today, and Cal, I have to ask, man, did you plan on, before we even get into things, just when you named the ranks, or however, did you know how psychotically addicting it would be for people to try to get to the next rank? Did you have any inclination of that? Like, was that planned?
Yeah, I mean, well, the funny thing is, I actually didn't even come up with those ranks. I think it was Eric mixed in with maybe some community feedback. But yeah, and then and then we had the idea to push it out onto the UI. So I kind of coordinated all that, but I can't take credit for the actual names themselves.
I mean, Cal, you should have seen this guy over the last month and a half. He was so excited to become a sperm lion. I mean, he wanted that 50K, and it's like that's all he talked about. And I mean, I don't know what the hell the name of any of them are, but I mean, he was so excited, and you got an addict there.
It's a carrot stick, man. Like, you see this, and it's like, oh, you get a title when you hit this. Not like that's gamification, right? Like that's the beautiful thing about this. And I mean, we got a ton of questions from people, but I'd just love to get your pulse on it, man. Your the feedback you're feeling from this whole Zeely adoption campaign, threads rolling out, just everything over the past 3 weeks now. How you have taken it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. It's been like, it's been like an amplification of everything that we've felt, for the last couple of years. I think Leo's actually about to turn 4 years old in July. So, yeah, it's been like more happening in the last, month or two than really for the last 4 years. So it's been a wild ride.
Just crazy. And for me personally, I mean, I know Tass talks about this a lot, but for me, just seeing like the fruits of all your guys' labor kind of coming to fruition here, where you're seeing everything you've talked about for years, like it's here now. And there's still people out there that are like, oh, I'm still on the fence. I don't know. It's just, I'm like, I want to shake them. I just want to grab them and shake them and be like, no, just listen to Task. Don't even listen to me. Just listen to Task. Like, so, dude, it's great. It's great to see. So,
thank you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm excited about, there are a lot of people on the outside looking in, and I'm excited to prove a lot of the naysayers wrong in a lot of different ways. They said we couldn't build threads. Now that we've built it, they're saying that, the Leo price will never go up. So that'll be the next fun domino to knock over.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And I don't think people understand when you mentally break the bread box and just start, as we've had conversations, Cal, both directly and indirectly and in posts and, in backroom chats and things of that nature. There's so many different directions to go in that, I see a lot of tunnel vision from people. And it's like, you got to give it time. And quite frankly, a lot of what I see holding some of these ideas up is infrastructure on Hive. We have to wait for infrastructure to be built. I mean, John and I were having a conversation. I guess it's no secret, since every time you go on Threads, there's a note that says Hive engine error. And, we know there's some infrastructure being built. You have talked and posted about different types of NFTs, smart contract capability that you utilize, which obviously is not tied to Hive because we don't really have smart contract capability, but that's being worked on by 3Speak and Vaultec. And so we have a lot of things going on with infrastructure that I think once that rolls out, and I don't think people realize the time for infrastructure, from what I can perceive, to application is like 10 to 1. Infrastructure takes 10 times as long to create as applications because there's just so much to do and you're starting from scratch, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a lot of interesting work. And I know that, one thing about the infrastructure is that, people don't see all the back end stuff that's happening all the time in terms of updates, but 90% of building something like this is actually done on the back end. So, when we deploy updates and stuff, a lot of times we'll see stuff like, oh, where are the updates? And really it's in the stuff that is, it's in the stuff that you can't see. So yeah, I mean, it's been really fun to build all this stuff.
Now,
he said fun. It sounds like fun. He said fun to build this stuff. You haven't pulled your hair out yet, man. You haven't joined Task and I with the. No, you still got your hair.
Yeah, he's still got a big rug there. I mean,
keep it as long as you can. Man.
Yeah, looking at his forehead, it looks like he might have some hair follicles that stay. I mean, by when I was his age, I could already see, further back on my head. But anyway, I digress on that one. Big thing today. Let's start right at the top. Leo Threads is an important part of Leo Finance, and it seems Ecency has jumped into the game. There's now waves. I mean, maybe this was known. I don't pay attention to Ecency, so I was just totally caught off guard. What do you know about it? What are your thoughts on it? What is it capable of? How does it tie into Threads? Does it tie into Threads? Give us your rundown on your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts is I got a little excited when I saw it because I'm a big believer in the microblogging vision, and I would like to see that propagated on Hive. But after I dug into it a little bit, I got a little bit less excited because it looks like there really isn't any sort of back end. It's more of a kind of, how would I explain it? It's more of like a very surface level extrapolation of what Threads is, which is they basically took the container model and they cloned that container model. And then basically they're just kind of plugging into kind of a surface level front end application of Threads. So what that means, in simple terms, is that in terms of scaling of any kind, I don't think it's going to be able to do any sort of scaling. And it's essentially just another way to interact with the back end of Threads. And I think they also integrated dbuzz into it. So if people want to post a microblog and they want to post it to their, long form Hive blog posts, that's what dbuzz does. And then if they want to post it to Threads, they can do that from there. But yeah, the devs and I took a quick look at it just to see, what it was all about. We knew that Ecency was working on it. They had mentioned, after Threads kind of blew up, they mentioned that they wanted to do something with microblogging as well. They asked us for some help too. But yeah, I mean, I'm not super excited about the kind of cheap copy and paste of the front end type of stuff, but hopefully maybe they come out with some sort of sophisticated back end for it. But just knowing that I've spent, especially this past week, because we had a day where there was 20,000 threads on Sunday, knowing what it looks like to scale this stuff, I'm a little worried that that wouldn't scale very well, just from an initial look. But I am glad to see more. Right? I'm glad to see more propagation of microblogging. That
the shell of this thing looked like TweetDeck to me. That's what it kind of looked like. The screenshot I saw, right? Is that would kind of be comparable to? Like, it's pulling from Threads, right? Like that's the idea.
Right.
Pull Threads feeds.
Yeah. I actually didn't think about that, but yeah, it does look a lot like TweetDeck, both front end and in terms of back end. since TweetDeck obviously isn't a replacement for Twitter, it's just an interface to tweet. So yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It definitely is kind of like a TweetDeck.
Is it possible? And I would imagine it would be, because if I post something through Leo Finance, Pete D can pick it up since it's on the blockchain, and people can interact with my Leo Finance post through any front end that interacts with the blockchain. Wouldn't the same principle apply? Because what Threads is, and I don't know on the back end infrastructure, but what Threads is you're setting up this container, which is a post, basically, and everything underneath it is a comment. So couldn't other applications just tap into that and both start top line threads, which is really a comment, and then commenting underneath the comment, and just keep feeding into the same container? So, and then just you pull all of that to your UI, and it reads everything. Isn't that possible?
It is possible to have all the UIs read from the same container and write to that same container. The one issue with that is scaling. Actually it kind of reminds me of that scene in Iron Man 1 where, he goes into low Earth orbit and, he has the icing problem. That's kind of like the scaling problem that exists when it comes to something like Threads, where when you get to a certain ceiling, which we touched on Sunday, we touched it, but we didn't break it because we were able to shuffle some things around on the back end to like kind of last minute add some support there. When you reach that ceiling in terms of the, multi-container thread protocol that we built, there really isn't any other way to scale it. You actually we have to come up with an entirely new solution for Threads if we want to scale beyond, say, 50,000 to 100,000 threads a day. So it's going to get really interesting to see what kind of scaling solutions come out. I would imagine, considering that other applications like EasyC haven't done anything with the back end yet, we're probably going to be the first ones to have to try to solve this issue of, what do we do when we get, like Sunday was a 20,000 thread day. What happens if that becomes the baseline every single day? So the team and I have been really at the drawing board in terms of what we can do to scale beyond that 20,000 threads a day if that becomes the new baseline, which it's kind of looking like it's going to be. So yeah, I mean, theoretically, all UIs could feed out of the same container, but eventually that scaling issue is going to become a problem. Even just Threads as a standalone front end and back end, we're starting to hit the upper limits of what we can do in terms of scaling with the current infrastructure. So we deployed a bunch of updates on Sunday to keep things. I mean, there was a little bit of downtime for a few minutes here and there because we were just doing the best that we could to kind of shuffle the containers around and make sure that nothing blew up on the back end. But obviously that's not a sustainable practice. Like, we can't sit here every day and monitor everything and make sure that things aren't getting blown up. So long term, we actually have this really cool idea for scaling that I won't leak any details on. But
before you go into that, if maybe to clarify, because you say scaling issues and you've mentioned nodes and running your own node. And I think we need a little clarity. First off, when you say running your own node in the past couple of weeks, you're already running a witness node. So I presume you're talking about an API node. Second thing, okay, API node. And if you could maybe explain to those non-techies of us what that means. And the second thing is, when you say the scaling issues and 20K hit the scaling ceiling and you have to work on solutions, is this a blockchain issue? Is this API issue? What do you mean? And where does the bottleneck lie? So if you could maybe explain what the API does and what it is. And then when you say scaling issues, where are they?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll start with what the full node would entail. So there's a few, probably about a dozen full nodes on Hive right now, run by various people. You guys know them. They're things like api.hive.blog, API.deathwing.me, I think, is the other big one, and a couple of other ones that are out there. And those basically provide an API source to interact with the Hive blockchain. So if you look at a interface of any kind, whether it's even Hive Keychain as an extension, or eSync or Leo Finance or PeakD or Hive.blog, all these interfaces have to interact with an API node in order to think of it as like a phone call or a telephone line to speak to the blockchain, right? That's what a full node is. It allows a front end to speak to the blockchain. And that's a two-way thing. So it allows it to send information to the chain. It allows it to read information from the chain. With Leo Finance and Threads, lately, actually like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we ran into a huge issue where we actually were making so many API requests that various Hive nodes, and we kept switching the nodes without knowing what the problem was. We just thought, oh, this node's having a problem, so we'll switch to a different one. But we switched between a few different nodes before we realized that the problem was that we were sending too many requests to the API, both to write data and read data. So that means like when someone posted a thread, we were trying to send the thread to the blockchain through that API node to put it on chain, and then vice versa when people were refreshing the page and trying to see the latest 50 threads. We were trying to read all that data from the node, and we were requesting too many things at the same time. So that was a huge scaling issue in terms of like blockchain API, right? That's one bucket of issues, is API issues. We managed to solve that by doing two main things. So we decreased our number of requests by essentially batching a lot of the requests. So we were able to decrease the requests per second. And then we also spread our requests across multiple nodes. So when you load the UI now, it's actually requesting from multiple API nodes at the same time. And the reason why those two things solve the issue is that every API node essentially has a rate limit. And if you go above that rate limit, the node will blacklist you from doing any more requests because it thinks it's like a DDoS attack. And a DDoS attack is just essentially when you request a lot of things from a server. So in a malicious attack, you would request a lot of things from a server in order to overload it and shut it down and basically crash it. In our case, it wasn't a malicious attack. It was just kind of like an accident where it was like, there's so many people using the UI at the same time right now. There's so many threads being posted. There's so many, polls being set up where there's votes and everything that you do on the UI creates a blockchain action. And that action has to be read and written through these API nodes. So we essentially crossed that threshold of having too many requests for any single node. So by batching requests, we managed to reduce it by, I think, at least half in terms of requests per second. And then the other thing that we did was spread it across multiple API nodes so that, instead of hitting that upper limit, we actually were able to just like use 3 different nodes at the same time. So that all of that is under the API scaling issue. The short-term solution are the 2 things I talked about. The long-term solution is that we have to have our own full node in order to not have a rate limit, because we don't need to rate limit ourselves if we know that we're making, non-malicious requests to our node. Full nodes start at like probably about $300 a month in terms of how big of a server you need. So they're relatively large. And the good news is that we can build a dedicated node, which basically just means that only our front end would be whitelisted to use it. And what that would allow for is that we could have a super high rate limit. And then if we start hitting that limit in terms of like how big the server is, we could just scale up the server. So that API issue, the long-term solution is going to be a Leo full node, which we've already started working on. In addition to, like you said, we got the witness node. So all of that is API issues. That's API scaling. The next scaling issue is with the actual blockchain itself. And that is the container issue that I was talking about before, where, especially on that 20,000 thread a day thread day that we had on Sunday, there is an upper limit of how many comments can be made on a top level post and read and written at the same time. We thought that we would come up with a solution called Leo Cache that would solve that issue, where we would just have, there would be a lot of containers, because basically every 1,000 comments, there's a new container that has to get created. We thought the solution would be, okay, let's just build a caching second layer system that would read all of the containers at once and combine all the data. But when we started modeling that out, and we got this is why the open beta is such an important thing right now. We got a lot of really good data on scaling on Sunday. And we realized that Leo Cache is only going to maybe get us to like 100,000 threads a day. It's not going to take us much further than that. So we've come up with a pretty genius solution for all of that stuff. And like I said, I'm not really going to share what it is, but there's going to be a solution for that container issue, which, like I said, I feel like it's like that icing problem. Like, you have to solve that problem at some point. You won't be able to scale beyond 100,000 a day, in my opinion, if you haven't solved for that. So I talked about the API bucket. That's the blockchain bucket. And then, there are some front end things that you have to scale up for, especially in terms of like filtering out content and stuff like that. So there's really like 3 core things when it comes to scaling, and those are them.
Okay. Before we step back and go further out, let's go in a little bit closer. May has been beta, testing, break things, debugging. May is the month of debugging, not adding features. We're at the 25th of the month, based upon where we were 2.5-3 weeks ago. How do you feel about where we stand with debugging? What are the problems still with mobile? I just reading what people say. I don't use mobile, so I don't have any firsthand knowledge. But how do you feel we are doing with the debugging? How much further till a lot of the major issues in your estimation can be knocked out? I mean, you're always going to have to debug till the cows come home. Debugging and scaling go on for eternity. But, to the point where you can sit there and say, we're not out of production, but we're not dealing with a beta product here anymore. Where do you stand compared to what you thought you'd be, and how much longer are we looking at if you had to guesstimate?
Yeah, so a lot of the debugging that we've done so far, and I'm looking at the dashboard that we've got, there's like 27 main bugs that we've solved for. And there's about 30 more in our backlog. So we are, about halfway actually to debugging a lot. And these are a lot of front end issues. So throughout this month, we've really been spending a lot of time, and there's been pretty much an update every single day to the UI. But when it's bug fixes and back end architecture, you're not going to see really anything change from day to day. Other than
you moved the X on me. You moved the X from the left to the right on the comments.
We did. That was actually a bug fix. So there was an issue where when you hovered over it before, you'd have to be in like a really specific spot to click it. And the simple solution was just to move it over to the right. And then one of the next things, which I considered a feature, not a bug, which is why it hasn't gone live yet, and the people requested this. When you reply in a pop-up, the pop-up should close after you reply without you hitting the X. So that's coming soon, probably next month, once we're through this bug fixing phase. But yeah, we did move the X. That's a bug fix. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So we're about halfway through all the bug fixes. When we do bug fixes, you're probably not going to see much change on the front end, but like you said, like you noticed a little change like that, but that's really just a bug fix. And a lot of the things that we've tackled this month have been like lead dominoes in terms of, like, it sounds bad that we've done 27 bug fixes, but there's 30 more in our backlog. I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but the reality is the bugs that we tackled first are like the big ticket items that kind of have that waterfall effect of solving some of the later issues, and are also just like the harder things to solve. So a lot of the bug fixes so far have been scaling, backend architecture, and stuff like that. You're going to, over the next couple of days, you're going to start to see like a lot of really tiny things getting fixed, kind of like the that X closing window. One thing that we actually just rolled out while we were live, the dev messaged me that he rolled it out, is a fix to that 5 hours ago thing. But I did notice that it still does it sometimes. But that's like the timestamp has a bug. So he's working on that.
How about the edit button?
So
We need edit button, especially on long form.
that's
posts.
feature. So that'll come hopefully in like a month or so. But
Dude,
that is a feature.
Cal, you got to think of poor task, man. You switched the little X from, like that's to him. That's a big that was massive for him.
No, but
totally
you need an edit button on long form content. I mean, I can't do anything on Leo Glossary since I can't. I mean, I could edit it in Peak D, but for canonical, however you say that, I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I want to do it through Leo Finance. So, but anyway, I've dated long enough. I know I don't get what I want. So anyway, Cal's like a woman to me anyway. He's a tease. He doesn't give me anything I want. I mean, it's just like dealing with a woman for Pete's sake.
Wow.
If we could step back, and I know people really want to hear about Leo Threads, Leo Bucks, Leo Threads. But I want to harken back to your idea. It's got to be 2 years ago, when you talked about Hive as a holding company, and Leo as a holding company, and we talked about the Leo token as a representative of that, and why, Project Blank didn't end up with its own token. It was incorporated under it. Maybe give us the 5,000-foot view with where you see Leo Finance now. Obviously, right now, the main focus is Threads, because that's the front of this ship that's going to break through these icebergs, if you're thinking of it as an icebreaker. But there's a lot more to this. And some people I know get frustrated because John and I talked about it on Tuesday's show, where if you go down so many paths, it gets to the point where it's like nothing really gets done. Progress isn't being made, at least to those on the outside. They can't see progress being made. And sometimes you have to put things aside. You put them on the back burner because you have a primary focus and you say, this is where we need to put a lot of attention. But this Leo Finance umbrella, and then we'll get into the topic I've been talking about a lot in a second, but maybe if you could give us the 5,000-foot view where you think things are and how you see all of this kind of starting to come together.
Yeah, when I wrote that article, I was thinking a lot about Project Blank. I was thinking a lot about some of the DeFi stuff. And I was realizing that, at that point we had already launched a lot of apps. And I don't remember if Cub had launched yet. But at that point we had launched a bunch of apps. And I knew that there were a lot more coming, including Project Blank. And also at that time, it was the thinking that there would be a Project Blank token, specifically for what is now Threads. And the reason for that was that we were going to open up. We knew that Project Blank was going to be like an opening up phase for the content on Leo Finance. So it was going to be like, hey, we're going to need a separate UI. We're going to need a separate token in order to handle a broader base of subjects. But then, Polycub happened, and I think it and obviously a lot of it coincided with the bear market. I think things would have went a lot differently if we didn't enter a pretty horrendous bear market, especially for alts. But that being said, it was clear that another issue, not just the bear market, was that we have all these tokens, and like having too many assets is a problem, especially when you're in a community that needs to grow. It's still small. If you have 1 million users or 10 million users, then you can have a couple different tokens and you'll be fine, because you just have such a base of people. But I think Splinterlands is also running into this issue where they have too many assets. It's grown a little bit too confusing in terms of what you should hold, what you should utilize, what to invest in, stuff like that. So we've kind of run into a very similar issue. So that's ultimately why, we took a step back and decided not to do the Blank token, and decided to focus on Leo, which kind of ultimately drove back to why I wrote that post in the first place, was that, Leo has it is and always has been, the core centerpiece of everything. It's meant to absorb all of the value of everything else. So if you consider like Google, like they've got Alphabet stock, right? And they have all these various Google subsidiaries that do different things. They have different departments. They're in completely separate business models. There's actually kind of an interesting thing going on where some of the departments are actually competing with other departments. But ultimately what happens is all of the value that's generated by all those subsidiaries goes back to that Alphabet stock. So, the idea is that Leo is that, right? It's the umbrella at the top and everything beneath it, all the subsidiaries, whether it's Cub, Polycub, or, the Leo5.io or Leo Dex, Hive Stats, like everything that's built underneath that umbrella should all have some mechanism to feed value back to the top, which is the Leo token. So Leo is meant to absorb all that value. And that vision has kind of evolved over time, but that core mission for the Leo token to absorb the value has never changed. So really the goal now is, let's like tighten up and not do all these different tokens and assets and, make everything so complicated. How can we actually absorb that value without creating new assets to try to split focus? So that's kind of where things have changed from like a tokenomic perspective. And there are more changes on the way that will make that more clear that, everything's kind of being driven right back into Leo. So yeah, I think I forgot whatever your second question was, but I went on my tangent about tokenomics.
No, you covered it. It's and this leads into another thing that we've been discussing for a year and a half, I guess. Ad revenue, and it looks like there's been some things going on. I didn't really follow closely. You dropped the word optimization, so maybe if you want to go into that, you can. But here's what I like about this concept, and you also mentioned on the AMA, I guess you could jump into that if you wanted, to the subscription model. And what I've summed this up at for the longest time is Leo Finance is actually applying business building principles. And Leo Finance is concentrated on stuff like revenue growth and developing streams of revenue and things of that nature, which you don't hear about that in crypto. It's like buy our token, it'll moon. And that's what you hear. And Leo ads, and I wrote about this last night, what we learned from this weekend as users. You learned a lot on the scaling. What we learned this weekend as users is how there's an exponentiality to this activity, because as more threads go up, more people can respond to threads, which generates more excitement, which can bring in more people to threads, which can lead to more threads, which can lead to more excitement and commenting and all of this other stuff, which all of that equals ad revenue, because there's ads all over the place. And I don't know if you want to go into it. Maybe you want to save this for a post, but what would be some of the parameters also that feed into the ad revenue? Usually it's, your site rank, time on site, number of visitors, number of pages, number of clicks, and I don't know if you want to explain all of that, but you have this ad revenue thing, and you said you optimized the ad. I don't know what that means. Where does this stand? What does it all play? And when does it go live? And just give us a summary of that, if you will.
Yeah. So we did a lot of work on the UI in terms of, and you guys have probably noticed over the last, 2 or 3 weeks, probably about 2 weeks, that ads are now placed in various locations, in addition to the native inline ads, which is something I wanted to do for a very long time, which is that, especially in the Threads feed, ads actually kind of look like a thread. Everything about them looks like a thread, which is, something that we borrowed from Twitter. But having that has increased clicks and impressions exponentially. So that's been a really efficient thing. The dev also came up with, one of the devs that's working on the ad stuff specifically came up with this genius solution, that actually rotates the ad every 45 to 60 seconds on the UI. So if you just leave a page open now, it would have previously counted as one impression when you first opened the page. Now, if you leave that page open, it's one impression every 60 seconds because it's constantly rotating the ad as if you refreshed every 60 seconds. It's not refreshing the content or anything else like that, just that ad banner. That alone has had a huge, huge impact because especially in this Hive culture and the way that we all use Leo UI, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing, we all have all these various tabs open for different pages on the UI, and we tend to keep those tabs open. So the dev kept that in mind and kind of took it upon himself to come up with this solution. And it's really, really genius. So that has had a huge impact. And then, like I said, just placing the ads in various locations. We've been kind of playing around with where ads should be placed and stuff like that to try to maximize the impressions without hampering the user experience. And that's all of this work has really been done on Threads only so far. We still have to put ads in the long form content feeds, which we also have to deploy the long form content feeds as well. We only have 2 of them so far. So there's a lot of work left to be done in terms of ad optimization. And I would say we are about 60% of the way there so far. And there's definitely another about 40% of like relatively low hanging fruit in terms of what we can do to optimize. And I think when we go live with, the numbers in terms of how much is being earned in ad revenue, it's going to be pretty surprising to everybody. And the amount of Leo that is bought back with that ad revenue is going to be, extremely surprising in my opinion. So, I mean, we're talking, just to not give anything too concrete away, we're talking, 6 figures of Leo every single month. So it's a lot of Leo that's going to start getting bought off the marketplace. And obviously it's correlated to the price of Leo. So if Leo doubles, then half as much Leo tokens get bought. Obviously it's the same dollar value, but the idea is it's kind of like this self-correcting, line that should be up and to the right, which is that as the Leo token price goes up, we'll actually see more and more users, which ultimately leads to more and more revenue. So we saw the inverse of that throughout this bear market where Leo has performed really poorly, along with most altcoins that lost, over 90% of their value. And that loss in value has led to a decline in ad revenue and a decline in users on the site. So seeing the inverse of that start to happen is going to be really cool. We've already seen a huge increase in the users and the ad impressions just on the basis of people are using the UI more. Our monthly active users have tripled since the beginning of the year. Threads, obviously Threads create a lot more impression events because, when you click on a thread and then you go back to the homepage and, you're replying and all that stuff. So a lot of really interesting stuff happening on the impressions front. And I'm just excited to see when we launch the smart contract and you actually start to see the Leo getting bought back every single day and every single month. And then, when it starts feeding into Leo Power APY, I'm excited to see what kind of like what kind of like correlation there is between the Leo getting bought back every month to the Leo price to then feeding back into more and more impressions. And I want to see that trend go up and to the right. And I think it will. I think once that price starts to turn around, I don't remember how long ago it was. Let's see if I can grab it real quick. But like a year ago, so last May, the Leo price was about 20 cents, which is a 4x from where it is right now. So, imagining that, we get back to a place like that, and we start to see impressions return to where they were at that time, things are going to get pretty crazy because right now we've maximized, or at least we are on the verge of maximizing. Like I said, I think we're 60% of the way there to maximizing impressions and making it efficient. Once we've maximized them and then we start to see that price start to go up, I really think there's going to be an interesting correlation there that I'm sure people in the community will start to measure once you guys can all see the ad revenue in that smart contract.
I think this is just my opinion, but I think the day you announce that there's a payout, and I would suggest, I don't know if you want to do this, but like there's LPUD Day, there's Leo Ad Revenue Day or Leo Payout Day, and it could be the 7th, could be the 23rd, whatever day you choose, and it's the same day every month. But I think the day you announce that and you say, okay, the 23rd of every month or whatever is chosen, with this 23rd of this month, we are going to have the payout. I think that's when people are going to start to go bananas. And then people are going to start, and then it'll really take hold the day you have the first payout. I don't care if somebody gets like 0.1 Leo. All of a sudden, they got some Leo out of the ad revenue. It's like, wait a second, I need more Leo. I need to get more involved. And this is one of the things that I find very intriguing, and this is very Web3-ish. I can own all the Tesla stock in the world I want. And I could go buy a Tesla, and that has some insignificant amount to the bottom line. I can shop at Home Depot if I have Home Depot stock. But, really proportionately, unless I'm buying, just stores of Home Depot stuff out, I'm not going to influence the numbers. But with this, with Web3, any of us, if you have Leo power, you should be on Leo threads through the Leo Finance UI and clicking around, because that's going to feed into the ad revenue, which is going to end up ultimately feeding back into your wallet. So we can actually influence our return through our activity. That's unheard of.
Yeah, I think a lot of noise should be made about what you just said, which is that pretty much for the first time ever, the users are in charge of how much ad revenue gets generated. And, the Leo token is that beneficiary. It's that umbrella token that absorbs all that value. And as a Leo power holder, you absorb that value. In addition to having more Leo power allows you to upvote other users. So you get to actually, the circular economy that's being built here is that you actually own Leo power, so you're a beneficiary of everything, and then you actually get to use that Leo power to not only encourage yourself to be active on threads and other parts of the UI, but actually like distribute upvotes and get other people to be active. You have a direct hand into what that ad revenue leads to. You can't just sit back as a Leo power holder and say, "Oh, I'm just gonna sit here and benefit." You have to be in action and involved in actually growing the activity on the site. And I mean, if we were to like overlay that onto Facebook, like just imagine how, like, if there's, I don't know how many people use Facebook these days, but let's say there's 1 billion people that use Facebook and every year they generate $10 billion. I mean, that starts to get really interesting for all the people that are involved there, because not only, and you have 1 billion people and it's making $10 billion, it's $10 per person, but it's not per person, right? It's not everyone is equal. It's based on how much Leo power you have and how active you are. So, if you're a power user and you're very active and you've got Leo power, you are in charge of not only how much you earn, but how much the platform grows and how much you can encourage other people to get involved with you. So it starts to become a very cohesive, exponential function of having everybody working together on that common goal of raising ad revenue, yes, but also, raising engagement and activity in general.
Well, I wrote a post about this. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but this is one of the fascinating things about tokenization and NFTs and stuff like that. And we have this ad revenue pool, and you take the ad revenue pool and it's 100%. What if you divide the ad revenue pool, 50-50 or 75-25 for Leo power holders? And then you have NFTs that are awarded based upon cumulative threads or threads in, the week or the month or the quarter or whatever time period you're dealing with. And all of a sudden you distribute these NFTs. And if the NFTs are in your wallet, then the smart contract starts reading it. And let's say 25% of the ad revenue goes to those NFT holders. And they may be the same or overlap with the Leo power holders. But now you're paying out not only for your Leo power holding, you're also paying out for those who are active and based upon their activity. So you don't have to, if you're new or if you don't have any money to buy Leo, okay, that's fine. Just get active and you'll share in the rewards. And that's really novel, and that's really a creative way to approach things, and that can't be done in Web 2.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if we want to jump into NFTs, there's a lot coming for NFTs on Leo, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of different use cases that we can deploy for all of this stuff.
John, why don't you go through some of the questions that we've had?
Well, I was going to say we basically answered a lot of them. One
Cal,
of them,
I don't know if you know, but one question that I was threatened of organ harvesting. I don't know what it means, but Eliana said she'd do real bad things to me if she didn't ask John to share with us the experience of selling his Rooney through MetaMask. And Cal, I don't know if you have any problems with MetaMask or Ethereum. John may be the person to go to because he sold the Rooney through MetaMask. And I mean, he always said he hated it, but maybe he's getting to be a fan of MetaMask and Ethereum. Are you, John?
So we'll go on to other questions from the community. I plead the fifth. No, dude, like most of the questions got tackled here. Big thing was waves. People were curious about that. But the one that I saw, Task touched on it and seems to come up a lot. Mobile friendly mobile apps, iOS, Android app. You got a game plan for that, a roadmap, or how you're going to tackle it too?
Yeah. So, I've in building Leo Mobile, which, we pushed live on Android and iOS sometime last year. I realized that, I didn't love the mobile app business. I don't love dealing with the iOS app store. We actually never even got approved to go to the iOS app store. They kept asking for all sorts of crazy stuff since we were claiming to be a Web3 social media app. So we're going to have to repackage that and re-upload everything. So I came up with my new thesis, which is that we should build our number one priority should be build an extremely robust and multi-device friendly web application where, whether you're on an iPhone, an Android, an iPad, or any other tablet or computer or any size device, if you go to leofinance.io, you get a very nice experience. That is my now number one mission in terms of UI development. Secondary to that, there is something that I teased a while back called Leo Merge, which is where we're going to merge the code base of the Leo UI with the Leo mobile framework. And this event it's a lot of work, but there's a dev that's dedicated to that actually. But it's going to take a long time to roll out. But that event will essentially take both code bases and combine them so that when we deploy an update to the UI, it deploys it across every single version of it, which means the mobile web app gets an update, the desktop web app gets an update, the tablet web app gets an update. Simultaneously, the Leo mobile on iOS gets an update. Leo mobile on Android gets an update. Everything gets updated across the board simultaneously. That's the goal with Leo Merge. But like I said, I still consider that to be secondary to the primary goal, which is to have an extremely robust and amazing web app. I think web apps, especially when we're in the Web3 business, I think web apps are going to be where a lot of focus should be. We even saw, when Elon took over Twitter, Apple was talking about removing Twitter from the App Store. The fact that there's that much power out there to, remove your app. I mean, if the iOS App Store decides they don't want you anymore, now your whole Apple app is completely useless. So for us to shift resources to focus solely on an app for mobile that could get removed, I know the Google Play Store is a lot better in terms of, gatekeeping, but I don't want to be beholden to any app store where, I don't have any sort of influence and I'm a tiny fish. So primary goal, amazing web app. Secondary goal, Leo Merge everything so that it doesn't really matter. We can update everything at the same time.
So you explained where we are now. We're still in debugging mode. It's going to be a few more weeks focusing on debugging. Obviously, then some of the debugging will add more features, but then I'm sure there's a bunch of features that are being backed up that you want to roll out. If you look at the second half of the year and we get past the debugging and then you start adding in some of the major features that you want, what do you see for the second half of the year going forward? You mentioned on the AMA subscriptions. What are some of the pillars, if you will, or the key points that you can touch upon to give people a vision of, let's say, the next 6 months that might excite them?
Yeah. Like I said, a lot of work on bug fixes right now. We want the user experience and the UI to be, as near flawless as possible. So, we want, especially when we are trying to, which we're working on right now, onboard people from, the outside of Hive. They're not going to want to come here and have, they don't want to see Hive Engine is down. They don't want to, post a thread and wonder why it's not getting posted on the UI. They don't want to lose a draft. All of these things need to get solved, in my opinion, for onboarding to be a good and smooth process where we can actually take this community to 5,000 monthly active users and beyond that. So the next, 6 months, especially because, that's getting us right to the end of the year, is going to be heavily focused on making the UI, UX very smooth, and bug free. Also scaling the architecture, and ensuring that we're actually ready to onboard all these people. And so that those two buckets are really kind of like the things that you won't see, necessarily. And then in terms of like exciting things that you will see, there's a lot of stuff planned for polls. Polls are going to take a much more center stage in a lot of different things. I've actually, if you go back to when I first got into crypto, which is now like 8 years ago or something, I always talked about blockchain voting and why I was so fascinated by this idea of putting if you vote on something, it should be on a blockchain. And I talked about, how presidents will one day get elected on blockchains. So voting is something very near and dear to my heart. I think there's a lot of different use cases for it. And what I want to see happen with polls is to create a very dynamic and customizable poll experience where, another Hive engine community could come in, and use like the CTP token and say, okay, if you hold, 10,000 CTP, your vote is worth 10 times more than someone who holds 1,000. And then do like a dynamic poll voting system to say, vote on the next feature that we're going to deploy, or vote what we should do with X, Y, and Z. So I think there's going to be a lot of stuff happening on that front. Right now, it's just one account, one vote on Hive, but there's going to be a lot of different stuff that comes out that you can customize. And we've already started deploying some cool like initiatives where you've got like the author of the week thing, where we're working with They Call Me Dan, Block Trades, OCD, to do authors of the week and vote with I think it's like over 12 million Hive power or something on all those different authors. So it's cool stuff like that we can do not only to help ourselves and our community, but to actually get everyone else on Hive involved. I want to see a lot more of that. And chasing after, again, like that 5,000 monthly active user goal is kind of overarching a lot of the stuff we're doing right now. So making the onboarding experience a lot smoother. We've got Google and Twitter sign-ins right now, but they definitely need some work to be a little bit smoother, just to make sure that, when we do get people in, when we finally convince someone, hey, join this and just try it, scan this QR code, and within 30 seconds, you can make your first thread and hopefully earn some crypto on it. We need to make sure that that's all smooth, so we can get to that 5,000 mark. And then we kind of touched on NFTs a little bit. I'm really excited about these NFTs. I think it's going to be, I've wanted to do something with NFTs for a long time, and we've been kind of quietly working on it in the background. And now we're kind of going full force into it. We've got a few people dedicated to just NFT stuff. And I'm actually working on a lot of the artwork kind of in my spare weekend time, just because I'm finding it to be really fun. So I'm excited to start rolling out some NFT stuff. It's gonna, we started this show talking about, the Leo Power roles that you can see now when you hover over someone's username. With the NFT stuff, imagine that, but like 100 times better. because you'll have an NFT wallet and there's going to be all sorts of different Leo NFTs. And those NFTs, you can display them with your avatar. You can display them next to your username. You can display them in your wallet. You can choose which ones are shown at the top for bragging rights. But then that's like phase one. Phase two is going to be, those NFTs are going to give you superpowers on the UI. So you're going to be able to say, promote a thread above other people's threads if you have an NFT and you like power it up. So it's basically like completely gamifying the experience. There's going to be leaderboards where you can do all sorts of different activities, and that kind of gets layered into threads or into NFTs. And then a big thing with the NFTs is I'm not a fan of projects, releasing like 10 different, what's it called? Like 10 different editions of like an NFT. Like they come out with, edition 1, edition 2, edition 3, and it just keeps going on forever. In terms of they're raising money every time they do those editions. I've never been a fan of that, which is why I haven't done a lot with NFTs, and Leo hasn't really done anything with NFTs yet. But then Eric came up with a genius tagline for what I want to do with these NFTs, which is engage to mint. So when you make 1,000 threads, every time you make, and I'm just using broad-based numbers here, don't tie me down to them, but if you, for example, every 1,000 threads you make, you mint automatically a random Leo NFT. And it could be a random rarity and a random type of NFT. And there's going to be over 100 of them at launch. You mint a random one, and that random one goes to your wallet. And then you can potentially combine them into other NFTs and rank them up. And then, like I said, in phase 2, you'll be able to use those and get like superpowers on the UI. But the cool thing is NFTs are not getting sold. Like we're not raising capital by selling NFTs. You as users are building up the platform, getting more users in, getting more engagement, building in ad revenue by doing all that stuff. And in exchange, you're minting these NFTs every time you make that 1,000 threads, every time you cast 100 upvotes, you're minting NFTs every time you do a bunch of actions like that. And what I think is going to be really fascinating to see is that we're also building a marketplace for these NFTs for the secondary market. So some NFTs are going to be soul bound to your account, which is like, when you make 10,000 threads, you're going to get like a 10,000 thread NFT, and it's like an achievement almost. And that you won't be able to trade or sell. It's something that's just tied to your account, bragging rights, all that type of stuff. There's going to be other NFTs though that can be traded and sold on the secondary market. We're not selling those NFTs. Those are engaged to mint, but then after that, you can trade them. And a small percentage of every trade on those NFTs is going to go into that Leo pool fund where to be determined if it buys and burns Leo, or if it gets added to that Leo Power APY pool. That part's to be determined, but that's a whole other revenue source for the Leo token. So that's really exciting to me from a financial perspective. And then obviously the gamification stuff of NFTs. And then also the Leo Substack, or what is now deemed the Only Leos service is going to get launched, but hopefully before the end of the year, which is yet another percentage of that will go back to that Leo pool as well. So yet another revenue source. And what I'm excited for that is that it's a revenue source for Leo, but it's also a revenue source for every single content creator on Hive. So far on Hive, one of, really the primary and only ways to earn has been from the Hive rewards pool. And then obviously all the second layer token rewards pools. This adds in like a real revenue source from Web 2. So I'm excited for that as well.
It's crazy. That was actually a few of the questions that we didn't tackle, was NFTs and stuff. So one more though, before we get out of here, man, and appreciate your time, but we know that Leo demands a lot from you. So we'll dive into the question here from Tokenized Society, friend of the show. He says, is it technically possible to have a switch that toggles the ordering of threads between oldest to newest and newest to oldest. For short thread storms, I prefer the standard oldest to newest and newest to oldest would help a lot for the thread cast. Any plans to mix and match those?
Yeah, so I would bucket that with a lot of like the filtering options. So yeah, there is a lot that we're planning in terms of filtering. Some of this stuff we can do with the current infrastructure. Other things actually need to wait until Leo Cache is deployed, and Leo Cache is really just a second layer. You could think of it like an Oracle watchtower that speaks to the Hive blockchain and to the Leo UI, and can better organize and segment content on the UI. So we are waiting and building Leo Cache in order to launch a lot of those filtering options, along with a lot of the long form content feeds.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, one thing John skipped over, but I did see it also from Tokenize. And I don't know if you want to go into it in particular, but maybe in a general sense. Eric mentioned partnerships, I guess, on some show, and talking about partnerships, and that you guys had a couple meetings. He threaded out about it. Where are you standing with that? Just in general terms, how's it going? Are you finding interest? You finding takers? What are your plans with it? Eric didn't really go into details. What are your overriding plans with it?
Yeah, I don't want to spill the beans on a lot of the stuff that Eric's got going on in terms of biz deving, but he's had, I don't know how many meetings so far, maybe a dozen meetings with various crypto projects. Some of them you would be very surprised to hear how big name they are. There's a lot of interest in having them come over and use Threads, if not as an exclusive platform for announcements, at least as in addition to their toolkit in terms of, copy pasting their Medium articles and their Twitter announcements directly onto Threads. That would be like the lowest form of partnership. And then there's a lot of stuff scaling up from that. So we actually had a meeting, me and Eric, right before we jumped on for this. So he's got a lot of stuff teed up with these partnerships, and I'm very excited to see some of them come to life. I think in the very near Sooniverse, you're going to see the first of many partnerships come out. And the way this is going to work is that they're going to get a big Leo Power delegation. They're going to be encouraged to bring over their user base, start posting long form announcements, and also their tweets onto Threads. And then, their goal is going to be to bring over their own user base and start using that Leo Power to upvote them. So now, imagine that some of these projects are quite large. Imagine that one project comes in and brings 100 or even 1,000 or more users along with them. Now they're upvoting, say 1,000 new accounts sign up through this project in particular. They sign up using whatever sign up method we have on Leo that they want. And now the project is upvoting all 1,000 of them for commenting on the articles, giving feedback. Maybe that community that comes over is going to start launching polls and saying, hey, what do you guys want to see next? What are some things we can do better? So now you got all these 1,000 new accounts transacting every single day or every single month or however frequent they are, making comments on chain, making threads on chain, voting on polls with custom JSONs on chain, and then earning Leo for all that stuff. It's going to be really cool to see that Leo get spread into a lot of different hands. So tokenomically speaking, that's very exciting for me. And then the monthly active users, obviously Eric's driving purpose is monthly active users. So everything you see him do is with that goal in mind of, hey, how do I get us to 5,000 by the end of the year? So the partnerships are going to be a huge notch in that belt. So yeah, I don't really want to spill any specifics on what he's done, but he showed me his pitch deck and talked to me about how the meetings went. And I sat in on one just on Tuesday right before the AMA. So it's all I can say is very exciting to see people from the outside have a real interest in what we're doing here.
Okay, and what you
Nice.
said brings up two further questions with me. Then I'll shut up and we can end this thing. Number one, we did see this past weekend the test. We did see some problems with resource credits. I know Leo Finance has a bunch of high power. I know there's other of us who have high power, which means resource credits. Is there a plan to somehow, I know Steemit back in the day would delegate high power automatically. Is there a plan to delegate resource power so these newer users come on, have the ability to do that? That's number one. Then number two, I know you've mentioned in the past, and there's been some changes reading what Isidio said. We had at one point the ability to go right from Leo Finance and send our stuff out on Twitter. There's been talk in the past. Are you thinking about sending tweets to Twitter, or more importantly, sending tweets to Threads? If you could cover those two areas.
Yeah. So the on the resource credit front, right now, when someone signs up with Leo Finance, whether it's through the social signups or directly with our Hive account signup protocol, we just delegate 10 Hive power to them. That's like the very brute way of doing it. We designed that system before resource credit delegations were possible. We haven't had time yet, but the next iteration of that is going to be, and this is all under the Leo Infra bucket, which is all the sign up stuff. The next iteration of that is going to be, we're going to remove that 10 Hive power delegation because you don't need that anymore. You can just delegate the credits now. And we're going to have a dynamic resource credit delegation pool. And, long story short on that is that as a user becomes active, it's going to give them enough resource credits to do, 10 threads and 10 upvotes and maybe like a couple long form posts or something. So it'll give them enough resource credits to do that. If they start hitting the upper limit of that, it will automatically delegate more resource credits to them so that they can do, their next 50 threads and, 50 comments and 50 upvotes and 10 long form posts. If they start to hit the upper limit of that, it'll bump them up to the next. It's kind of like almost like one of those plans where it's like bronze, silver, gold. It's going to keep bumping them into the next bucket. And if they go, say, 2 or 3 months without meeting like a certain quota for the bucket that they're in, they'll get dropped down to the bucket that they were in previously, and it'll keep doing that, so that the resource credits are dynamically flowing as they need them. That's not going to cost the users anything in our current model. One question that came up that I had to come up with a solution for is, what if that gets gamed, or what if it becomes just a scalability problem where Leo doesn't have enough Hive power to actually have the resource credit pool needed. Two solutions for that. One is that there are plenty of other big Hive whales out there that want to support Leo in terms of resource credits, and they've already pledged support in terms of a lot of resource credits. The second solution is if we want to do something, which I think we would do, that's a lot more sustainable and good business practice, is that a small percentage of whatever rewards those users earn that have resource credits delegations gets paid back to Leo, and then Leo will convert that into Hive power and power it up so that we can sustainably build our resource credit pool as we gain more and more users. But I really don't see that being a problem until we're that's going to be a really good problem to have. That's going to be like hundreds of thousands of new accounts. So when that problem comes, we'll solve for it, but I'm not too worried about it. And then, so that covers the resource credit stuff. I don't know when that's going to be rolled out, so I won't give you a soon for that quite yet.
Sooniverse, no, not even Sooniverse.
Yeah, it's already happened in the Sooniverse.
Perfect.
It's just about reality catching up. So your second question was about the communicating with Twitter. So
Twitter back and forth.
Right. So a lot of people have wanted, either a cross post to Twitter or vice versa, like you mentioned. We are working on that. I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a cross post to Twitter, but maybe not something that comes back. I haven't really decided if I want that or not, because, the whole business model here is we need people using our UI. That's how Leo generates revenue from ads. So the idea, and I've talked about this a long time ago, is to, I actually think I talked about it on this show a long time ago, was that creating the Threads UI almost as like another UI for Twitter, where like someone who normally uses Twitter a lot could actually use the Threads UI to interact with Twitter and Threads simultaneously. I think that is a much more likely vision than having the full back and forth. And then, you know, along similar lines, something I want to do is for anyone that's on Twitter, I want to have a really simple onboarding process to use their Twitter account to create a Hive account on Leo Finance, and then click one button to actually back up all of their tweet history onto Leo Threads. I think that's huge. I think, you know, we could get thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who, if they don't even want to touch Threads ever, but just want to use it as like a backup hard drive, I feel like that is like a really cool use case for Threads to say, like, you could get banned one day. You could, you know, Twitter could go under one day. You know, any number of things could happen. But why don't you just click this button? It costs you nothing other than maybe, you know, 30 seconds of your time to click the button to back up all of your tweets as threads directly on a blockchain. And I think at the very least, people will use it as a hard drive. And as you go from least to most, I think people would start to be curious about, hey, all my tweets are suddenly on a blockchain. What does that mean? You know, maybe their tweets start getting cross-posted and they start earning something. And we shoot them emails like, hey, you earned $10 this month on the tweets that you backed up. You know, maybe you should click this link and like check out how you earned it. And it gives them like a nice little chart. So there's a lot of really cool stuff. And I think we could build out like a really robust email list from that, which we can then kind of use to slowly convert people from Twitter to Threads.
Dude, that's awesome. So not financial advice, but I know what I've been doing over the past couple of weeks. But yeah, NFA. I think that's the disclaimer that we have to put out.
I think what John's trying to hint at is whatever you do, it's probably a good idea based upon this conversation to try to get a little bit more Leo in your account.
Keep it just under the 5 cents right now, just for a little bit while I can stack some more.
I said, however you do it, you can do it. Yeah. If you post on Threads, there's a good chance either Cal or myself, and maybe even John go the like once every 3 days that he shows up.
Whale. You're going to say the sperm lion. The sperm lion, right?
Upvote your stuff, and that gets you some micro earning. That gets you Leo coming into your wallet. There's a lot of people who I've upvoted a ton of times. I'm sure Cal has upvoted a ton of times, and they get some Leo. They get some Hive and HBD because we're upvoting above the dust threshold. So, you know, I'm not saying they have to go out and buy it. It's a good idea to get active because you may get some upvotes.
Yep, for sure. A lot of people are probably sitting here waiting for the word because we have the Zeely challenge, the adoption campaign word. I talked to Eric. We did switch it, but I just tested it out. It didn't work yet. I'll give the word. You can try it. If it doesn't work, it will work soon. But the word is cow, man. Come on, it's cow. And, you know, of course. So you can try it out. If it doesn't work, it will down the road. Just keep that in your memory banks. File it. Dude, appreciate everything you do. Obviously, you've been a huge help to me personally and just to this entire blockchain, this entire community. And it's so awesome to see everything just come to, you know, the realization of the things you've been talking about for years. So Leo to the moon, man, and appreciate you. Thanks for all the support for this show too. And yeah, man, everyone get out there and get active on Threads, please. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I always love seeing your Threadcast. So thanks for the support.